Man, remember that Fight Club scene in John Wick? That was really cool. I really wish someone made a video game like that. Actually, the hallway fight from the first season of Daredevil, that was really cool. I wish someone made a video game like that. No, wait! The entire fight scene that is The Raid. I wish someone made a video game like that. What? You're saying they basically did? Sifu was on my games to play list from the moment I saw the reveal trailer during Sony's State of Play last February. The slick art style, environment design, and the fluidity of animations during the combat were an instant sell for me. A year later, I picked up Sifu a couple of months after its release, and I basically didn't touch another game in the following 2 to 3 weeks. Except maybe Rocket League.
Alright, get lost, all of you! You're fired! Go on, scram! Get out of here, you moochers! That's right, keep moving!
You know what? Yeah.
Except you stay.
Sifu is quite an unusual game to summarize due to a handful of key mechanics, but I'm going to try my best to make the most sense doing so. The game centers around a martial artist on a revenge tale following the murder of his father 8 years prior. Look, I'm not going to beat around the bush for this one. There is very little story here. If you're hoping for an incredibly deep narrative with twists and turns, character arcs, betrayals, and all that sort of shit, you're going to be disappointed.
Now let's see how it looks so far.
But in reality, it would almost be impossible to build a narrative given the game's core mechanic. Beginning the game at 20 years old, the player will need to fight their way through 5 levels, beating the boss at the end of each one to progress to the next. The reason I bring up the character's age is because if you die, you will then resurrect again older. Every 10 years of age, the martial artist gains a buff to their damage output, but also loses health. Now, before you think, well, that means I can die 10 times before anything bad happens, it's not that easy. Every death stacks upon the last. So yes, on your first death, you will only age from 20 to 21. But on your second death, you will age from 21 to 23, third death 23 to 26, and so on. Once you pass the threshold of 70, the next death is permanent and you will need to begin the level again, or consider going back to previous levels, beating them in fewer deaths to have more lives when you return to where you eventually died. It's not all bad news though, because beating tougher enemies mid-level can reduce the growing age counter by 1 in order to help the player to briefly slow their impending final death. For example, the first time I reached the final level, the Sanctuary, I was age 54. Given I had to still clear the entire level on a high age counter before then fighting the final boss, I was at a huge disadvantage. And this is where going back to previous levels meant I eventually returned to the Sanctuary age 31 and much better prepared. Funnily enough, during the first run of that final level, I never even made it to the final boss.
Please.
Sifu is tough. I got my ass beaten to the ground consistently on my first few goes, resulting in regular scenes of standard enemies just laying into a senior citizen without mercy.
How many times do we have to teach you this lesson, old man?
I love the young people.
Sifu's combat demands every bit of your attention, as timing of parries and dodges is so to the second, you'd be forgiven thinking you had definitely pressed L1 in time the first few encounters, but hours later realizing just how off the mark you actually were. The AI also doesn't adhere to the one-on-one attack patterns that most action games have adopted in the last few years. Don't get me wrong, I absolutely love me some Batman Arkham style combat and the power fantasy that it provides. I mean, it makes sense that Batman would solo a group of thugs without even a scratch on him. But in Sifu's world, you'll be midway through blocking a combo from one enemy to then get bottled from behind by another and stumble into a flying kick from the side from a third assailant.
You don't know who you're messing with. Don't knock that yellow. Which one of y'all kicked me?
What this unforgiving approach does provide though is probably one of the most satisfying payoffs through a player's patience to learn the different combos and silhouettes of each enemy archetype. Sifu's enemy types aren't as easily identifiable when compared to some other titles. At the very least, you won't see one style of enemy always in bright red outfits to mark them like
Dodgson! Dodgson! We've got Dodgson here!
But body types will help to indicate the fighting style you'll be up against. A small body type with long legs might warn for a kicking preference, a bulkier frame to hint at higher damage tolerance, or an imposing physique to symbolize a greater output of strength than others. As you defeat more enemies, the player will gain XP to spend on new moves such as a sliding kick or a staggering back fist. Though, these moves will only be unlocked for the current life, as death will cause all learned moves to be forgotten, unless you choose to prioritize spending all gained XP on a single move multiple times to permanently unlock it for every life moving forward. In addition, in each level the player can find a handful of shrines which will allow for a one-use upgrade, such as more health gained back from takedowns or more damage output from weapons. These upgrades are dependent on current age, level score and XP however, so careful planning is needed when choosing which upgrade to take and which to ignore. And what both of these systems do is allow freedom to experiment and build your character and moveset to best fit your playstyle. Do you want to buy as many new moves as possible to allow for more options in the heat of combat? Or would you rather ensure that a particular move is unlocked permanently for every new subsequent run? Given its light on the narrative side, Sifu is a game that lives or dies on its combat, so it's a really good thing that it kicks ass. Sifu gives the player a multitude of options to dispatch foes, be that standard kicks and punches, cool takedowns, or weapons and objects found in the environment. The environment itself can also be used as a tool in combat, offering offensive options such as hitting enemies off ledges or guiding them into the pathway of a large moving object to either stagger or knock them out entirely, and defensive like rolling over a table or sofa to put distance between yourself and an aggressive foe. In the heat of battle, tables will break, glass will shatter and walls will crumble, all adding up to an insanely cinematic experience. This is one of those times where I think I can actually say the video you're seeing does the game justice. The animation work here is top notch, translating rather simple button inputs into flashy bursts of violence and movement. Honestly, most of the footage you're going to see in this video, I'm likely pressing just a random combination of square and triangle. But when you factor in the specific button prompts for unlocked moves as well as general combo chains listed in the menus, you can still find unique animations appearing after hours of play. As mentioned before, weapons and objects can be picked up to use both offensively and defensively. Pipes, machetes, bats, staffs, bottles and stools are scattered all over each level to crack over the skull or sweep the leg of an unlucky recipient. But, like Breath of the Wild, there is a degradation system in place, so focusing their use on the right opponents is yet another consideration the player will have, especially when the boss fights are concerned. At the end of each level, one of the game's 5 bosses will be waiting. The botanist, the fighter, the artist, the CEO, and their leader, Yang. Each boss fights with a unique weapon and style, so to put it plainly, you're gonna die. A lot.
You got knocked the fuck out!
Each fight consists of 2 stages, with the second usually taking a slightly more supernatural spin, such as the sudden appearance of a bamboo forest when against the botanist, or the artist transforming the snowy surroundings into a sea-like arena. At this point, each boss will also introduce new attacks or increase their aggression levels, so just don't get distracted by the cool background change, otherwise your life counter will be pushing 70 before you can say. That being said, it's hilarious to go back after completing the game, having learnt all their attack patterns, because then it just becomes that scene at the end of The Matrix where Neo is making an absolute mockery of Smith. Sifu's 5 levels really feel like a best-of compilation for action cinema. From grimy and claustrophobic apartment blocks, to neon-lit club dance floors, eerie art museums, to high-rise towers. The sheer variety in style and scope only seemed to get better as I went from one level to the next. And in addition, the use of colour throughout the game is fantastic. To the point that if you stripped away all sense of geometry in the level, I believe you would still be able to identify the location purely based off the colour palette. Now you may be thinking, just 5 levels? Is that it? But in a way that benefits both replayability and in-game mechanics is the discoverable alternate pathways. As you beat each level, the player can find items such as keys to grant access to shortcuts in previous levels. What this encourages is for the player to return to the level before and use this new route to cut out huge chunks of the level in order to save potential lost lives. The downside to this, however, is that less combat encounters will lead to less XP gained, and therefore less chance to purchase new moves or upgrades at the shrines. Some shrines will be skipped entirely through taking shortcuts, and so there is a tactical consideration when choosing which path to take each run. Nevertheless, whether it's the long or short route, Sifu always delivered on a visual front, offering some of the most gorgeous levels I've ever experienced. Like Kena, Sifu keeps the visuals simple with just enough environmental detail to bring the world to life. And honestly, it's games like these that I'll be able to boot up in 30, 40, 50 years time and still be swept up in its marvel. Slowclap have created a true love letter to Asian cinema, and it is felt from the small things up to the direct homages like locking the camera side on as you charge through a swarm of enemies in one of the coolest moments in the game, ripped straight from 2003's Oldboy. You can pick up Sifu for a really affordable price, and I think anyone with an interest in fighting games or action films in general will have an absolute blast with this one. So my only question to you now is, what are you waiting for? Hey guys, thank you for watching. Apologies for taking so long to get this one out, but I have to admit, as soon as I finished Sifu, I immediately installed and started up my first playthrough of Outer Wilds, and this game is just insane. Like the last few years, I've consistently heard good things, even great things about this game. And, you know, it's one of those things where you're like, is people really just hyping up? I really don't understand how humans could conceptualize the kind of experience that the game offers. And I really don't want to go into too much detail about it because it's truly something that if you can go in knowing nothing about it and restraining at all times to figure out how to finish it, oh my God, it's incredible. I've not actually finished it yet myself, but every single thing that I've found in that game is absolutely blowing my mind right now. So I'm not probably going to make a video on it because I don't think I can do it justice. Just go play Outer Wilds. It's on PS Now at the moment, I think, but I don't think it'll be that expensive if you have to buy it outright. So that's my recommendation. Screw Sifu, just go play Outer Wilds. I'm kidding, play Sifu as well. Anyway, if you liked what you saw, please consider liking the video and subscribing to the channel, and I'll see you on the next one. Take care. Bye.